53 million orphans worldwide. Every day, an estimated 5,700 more children become orphans. Alone, scared, and vulnerable. It's up to us to reach out to orphan children and show we care. Sponsor an orphan and give a child the best chance in life. Visit www.thehopeappeal.com.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Social Discourse. My name is Sakina Datu. Now, first of all, Happy New Year to all of you. May this year Allah help us, inshallah, to become better people by looking deeply within ourselves and to recognize all the diseases that we may carry within us. Now, one disease that I really want to focus on today is that of being judgmental. It is so easy to fall into this trap, really. So many of us complain constantly and feel judged, and we grieve about that. However, there are very few of us who can really claim that we ourselves have not succumbed to this at some point in our lives. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Hujurat in ayah number 11, "O you who believe, let not some people among you laugh at others. Perhaps they may be better than them." Why then do we find it so difficult to have the humility to not put other people down? Our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, says that when a believer accuses another believer and blames him for the sins that he has committed, that person will not die unless he himself commits the same mistake. So what gives us really the courage to think that we can get away by looking down at others and judging them? Now, to discuss this, these are the sicknesses among all of us, and we need to first deeply look within ourselves so that we can then have the ability to be able to educate everyone else. I am joined today by two fabulous sisters. Sister Uzma Naqvi, our favorite guest. She is a holistic transformational coach. And we also have with us a Sister Sharmina Karmali, who is joining us from Vancouver, Canada. And I'm so glad to have both of you opening the ear for me. Salamun alaikum, sisters.
Alaikum assalam.
Let's start with you, Sharmina. Like I said in my introduction, we are all, at some point, all of us are guilty of looking down upon other people. And basically, when we are being judgmental, when we judge someone and we think, this is not correct, you didn't do this right. In other words, we are actually thinking that we are better than them. I mean, we may not say it, but that is the inference that we think, because I am better and I do more, therefore, I don't think that you are doing good enough. Why is it so much within all of us? Why do we do it? Why is it so difficult for us not to have the humility to think that, other people are better than us?
So, first off, thank you for having me over. To answer that question, I will say our brains are wired that way. We are predisposed to this tendency. And as I was doing a little bit of research, I came across a very great quote, which is, "It's not whether you win or lose, it's how you place the blame," which is from Oscar Wilde. And we will talk about it, about why, what, how. And with the questions that you may ask, and we were talking about why, I would say that it's not about the person you're judging, it's your reflection. It's about you, actually. And why, when you are not happy with yourself, that's when you judge.
And why do you think being judgmental is so toxic? I mean, I don't think anybody would say that it isn't toxic, because you know, when people who are judged, oftentimes you listen to them, it is extremely demotivating. People can become very bitter. But why is it so toxic? Do you feel that maybe sometimes people who are judged, that there is some lack within themselves, that you know, someone else's opinion matters so much to them?
So basically what it is, we can only see in others what we have in ourselves. When you're judging others, you're basically judging yourself. They can actually get in the way of your well-being, because your judgment about life in people has a significant impact on the amount of anxiety you experience. And those words can be detrimental to your health, and it can impact your emotional well-being as well. So,
Sister Uzma, you know, a lot of times, let me bring in the Islamic perspective here. A lot of times, the way we justify, and when people are being judgmental, is that this is Amr bil Ma'ruf. So this is one of our key entrants into telling people, you know, anybody who is not wearing hijab, they are not good enough Muslim, or anything. I mean, the spectrum is huge in terms of how we decide other people are not good enough, not good Muslims, not good human beings. How do you differentiate the aspect of Amr bil Maruf, which is wajib for us, which we are supposed to do, and the difference in being judgmental?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakallah khairan for having me here. It's absolutely a pleasure always to join you, Sister Sakina, especially on a topic like this, which is very close to my heart, something I talk about a lot within my teachings. Judgment is something that we all carry inside of ourselves. And I'm going to start answering this question by saying something really controversial, which might feel like I'm canceling out what you've opened up with. So please do forgive me for that, but I'll try to explain what I mean. You know, when it comes to judgment, on the surface level, it's a terrible thing. Being judgmental to other people tears people down. It makes you look at them. There is a lack of empathy. There is a lot of insecurities that you carry within yourself, and you kind of project that on other people. But in actual fact, if we looked at it more from a spiritual perspective, which is what you and I are just kind of talking about, Amr bin Ma'ruf, it starts with self-reformation. And judgment can actually be a really good thing if we get conscious about it. Because it's almost like a blessing from our soul, because our soul is constantly wanting to become whole again. We are born whole, complete, right? And then because we are relationally dependent creatures, and because we get influenced by the people that we are brought up by the people that we experience along the way, different things are placed on us, different aspects of ourselves that are really approved and liked by the people that we are surrounded by, and there are aspects of ourselves that are really disliked and shut down. So there is a bit of us that becomes really acceptable and accepted and significant and loved, and then there is another area of us that just becomes disconnected, and it's not a place that anybody wants us to show. So as a child, we suppress that bit and we hide it away. So even if when we're seeing something in someone else, and we're looking at them in a resentful way, and we're looking at them in a disapproving, exaggerated way, what actually is happening is that this process is creating a self-rejection in ourselves. Because we are denying and suppressing that part of us within ourselves that we couldn't express because we weren't allowed to express. So it never goes away. It's still very much a part of us, but at a subconscious level, because it splits and goes into the subconscious mind, it comes out in this way. It starts to show that we are now starting to project ourselves in this way to other people. So while judgment seems like a dis-ease in the society that we belong to, but in actual fact, this can be an opportunity that our soul is presenting to us to become whole again, to understand what is missing from within ourselves and what is the need that we need to start accepting for ourselves. And we can get really conscious and start to reflect on how we can reform ourselves. And once we reform ourselves, not being judgmental is a byproduct of that healing process. So we would automatically start to wake up to that fact. So it's just that hadith that comes to mind. Most people are asleep. They wake up when they die. That aspect of ourselves that remains in darkness that we never really get to see.
This more, Sister Uzma, what you're talking about is more when we are being judgmental, is explanation of what is going on inside of us, and like you say, we are on a journey. But when you were talking about the person on whom we project this, it can go in two ways. I mean, for some people, it can be a motivation, you know, it's something they can change in a positive way. But also, for a lot of people, it can be completely detrimental. I mean, you know, we for example, as a community, this is a subject that is often an issue of discussion, especially amongst our young people. I've had young people say to me, I'm not going to mosque anymore because, you know, I've removed my hijab, or just for whatever reason, you know, I'm not very talkative, I'm not very social, and when I go to mosque, people judge me, everybody's looking at me, and you know, it's not always what we say, it's even just the way you look at someone, the atmosphere you create. And we are losing a lot of people within our communities, you know, who just feel so secluded because everybody else is judgmental towards them.
I mean, it's such a heartbreaking thing to see, and it's in every area, literally every area of expertise or workplace, or like you said, mosque, or even within the homes, within really close relationships, there is this resentfulness that goes on, and it is really, really detrimental. And again, it comes from the fact that there is a lack of self-awareness, and there is a lack of empathy, and often that person has been on the receiving end. And we as a community have a duty, and these conversations are super important for that reason, that we need to bring this up more, and we need to start talking about it in a platform like this, and even within our mosques and centers from a pulpit. These are the kind of topics that really need to be aired, and we need to start to have a process whereby we can hold people accountable so that this doesn't keep spreading. Because while it's an opportunity to self-reflect, what it does to the other person, like you said, cannot be reversed. And often you never know where that person is. They might be on the edge of the very life itself. And that last comment that you make might be the thing that pushes them over. So if we remain unconscious and so oblivious to what we're creating and how this is spreading like wildfire, it can create such a big problem in our communities, and we must start talking about it. And I think this is why this conversation is so prevalent and important to have.
Sister Sharmina, you know, when you find that people indulge in this, now for some people, like I said, you know, we all of us have it in us to some extent, but there are some people for whom this is like a major entertainment. I mean, they thrive on this. Their job is to sit down and judge everybody, you know, pass judgment in any setup, and it's actually an enjoyment. It's something that they enjoy doing. Do you think that this is something that they are maybe doing it unaware of the effects, or is this just something evil in the person who sits down and purposely their aim is to, you know, laugh at other people, pass comment at other people? I'm just trying to understand, what is it that makes people do this continuously?
That's a great question. Great question. Again, you mentioned Surah Hujurat, and it's the same thing on ayat number 12 is, "O who you believe, avoid much suspicion. Indeed, suspicion is a sin." So to think or claim that we know someone deep down in their intention is far from truth. And getting back to what you said, I will bring up something about judgment, and it used to be back in the days, not as much now. I would say back in the days when women were going through divorce, it felt like they had to go with their head down to the mosque, because it felt like people are looking at you in a different way. as if you haven't tried enough, as if something is wrong with you, as if there is something or the other, or maybe you are not able to endure the sufferings or whatever it is. So that was a mindset before. But now when you think about it, it's like people who are going through this are already on an emotional roller coaster. They are already experiencing a huge trauma. And so, just as you said, some people don't even go to the mosque. Now, instead of even talking about these girls and youth, we're talking about how people who have gone through this trauma have actually, tried to not even go to the mosque as often, because they know that if you go there, people are going to question you. They're going to judge you. They're going to ask you things which actually is something you're trying to forget, or you're trying to work on your emotional well-being. So having said that, I would say that, yes, that used to happen, and perhaps it still happens with the children about the hijab. Again, when parents, we may have a question about how the upbringing. Every parent wants the best for their children. They will try to work on anything and everything possible for them, for this world and the hereafter. But then there is a time where the children get their own state of mind and they want to make their own decision. And at that point, at that time, there is only so much a person can do or a parent can do. Hence, the parenting judgment.
Sister Uzma, this is our favorite topic, and I have to bring you in on this. I don't think there is judgment in any field as much as there is in parenting. It's almost like you just can't keep quiet when you see another parent parenting. Almost always we think this, they are doing this wrong, they're doing that wrong, and this starts right from the birth of the child. All the way through until the children are adults. It is so ingrained in us. Can we say this is something that comes instinctively, because we are all mothers, and watching another mother, instinctively there are maternal feelings whereby you are trying to help, or does that go beyond that?
It's an excellent question, and as being a mother of four myself, I have two sets of children. One is like an older set who are adults now, alhamdulillah, and there's a little set of children. So I've been on the receiving end of this kind of judgment for a very, very long time. And I'm quite involved with like community work, and I have been previously as well, and I see it happen a lot within our communities. From the point of view, like from even like when we have during Ashura, during Majalis period, mothers of young children are almost petrified of walking into centers because of the judgment they have to face when they have a little child. And it is beyond me, honestly, and it breaks my heart of like how, and I know a sister who literally said, I didn't have any more children than 2 because of what was going on in the mosque, because I felt like I had to either cut my ties off with the mosque or have another child. Like, it's that bad. And alhamdulillah, I think things are starting to change a little bit now, because the youth are starting to come in the forefront and starting to take charge a little bit more. So I think there is a little bit more understanding than it used to be. But the older generation had almost zero tolerance. And I think that this is a passed on generational trauma. When you are shut down as a child by your parent, that's the only protocol you know. That's the only way you know how to shut down a child. Back then, they used to get the backhander when a child spoke too much, walked too much, was loud, or did anything too much. The only way they knew was to, do something to physically hurt the child to shut them up. So they've progressed from that to say they will shout or they will pass on judgments. So we're diluting it now, and it is getting better over the time. And I think that it's great that we have a lot of information out there now, and people are beginning to learn. There's a lot of parenting classes and stuff like that, but it's still happens and it still goes on, and we have to do something to stop this, because it is painful to see mothers struggle the way that they do. And I know I'm focused only on mothers, but this happens across the board, even in the coaching field. Like, honestly, the amount of people say competition to one another, this is a problem when people don't understand their uniqueness. They don't understand how very unique they are, that in the all of 7.8 billion people around the world, there is no one like them. And if everybody understood that fact about themselves, they would not be projecting their lacks onto other people. So I think there is a huge need to self-introspect. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, a mu'min is a mirror to another mu'min. If we took that on board, and if we started to reflect on, when I'm hating something or when I'm judging something about somebody else, this is actually a message for me. How is it a message for me? I need to start analyzing that, and I need to start to wear that. Like, I need to bring that to life and really kind of look within. But that doesn't happen, because it's far more easier and it's far more tastier to sit amongst a group of people and rope people into a conversation that's so entertaining. It's like, did you see so and so? Did you hear so and so? And it's it's painful to the ears once you've started to work on yourself. And if you become an aware person, you would not engage in a conversation like that. You would not entertain any conversation like that. And I think it's very important to become aware. If a person comes to you and says, so and so said this to you about you, you want to question, why was that person even comfortable talking about me in your circle? So it's spread a lot, and we need to nip it as fast as we can. And it will take a lot of self-awareness, and it will take us speaking to our ulama and telling them that this is what we need to talk about. This is what we need to bring to the table as a discussion, so that we can try to conquer this.
Absolutely, and I think you're so right. I think one of the signs of growth, your own personal growth, is when you recognize it and you put a stop to that. Often a lot of us are involved in activities, and at some point in our growth, you start to feel uncomfortable sitting in a group or in an environment where everybody else is being talked about. And I think that, Sister Uzma, I think you would agree that that is when growth starts to happen. Now, Sister Sharmina, I want to ask you if you think this is more common within our communities, Muslim communities, but specifically those who have come from Eastern countries. Because a lot of times, I think, if you look at the West and if you look at the Western culture itself, people tend to be, I don't know whether they're less judgmental, but they don't project themselves as much. I mean, I could be wrong, and totally feel free to tell me if that's what you think. But sometimes I think within our Muslim communities, we really enjoy this kind of activities, and therefore, how do we raise awareness? I mean, I'll give you an example. You're joining us from Toronto, Canada, and you can give us your perspective. But we have cultures in each country, in each nation. Now, in the UK, in other parts of the UK, people will speak and will tell you. And of course, in London, we are well known not to say it, but in every other method to make you feel you're not part of us. You are not comfortable, you just feel secluded from certain things, and that's a very common culture here. Do you feel, Sister Sharmina, that this is very much a problem of our communities who have come from the East?
So to answer that question, I've been in Canada for 20 years. But speaking about judgment is actually about repressed or rejected part of themselves, of the people. People judge others because of their own insecurity or unhappy lifestyle or emotional state of mind. And also, speaking of coming from Tanzania, or most of us from India, Pakistan, and coming to the West, yes, it's a challenge. And the challenge is you want to be accepted. And that's basically the challenge, because you're here, things were different back at home, and things are different here. But if you are a strong-minded person, and if you are a person who believes in yourself, and if you are a person who actually feels strong enough to survive, then you don't have to really focus on who is judging, because it's all about you right now. And I always say people should accept people for who they are and not what you want them to be. As that's a very big thing. People, like sometimes what you feel that if you know a little bit, if you're, let's say you're going to the mosque and you are like a full-timer there, every kushali, every wafat, everything that's up. So sometimes it makes you feel superior that when you don't see somebody, and for once when you see them, you'll be like, I haven't seen you in the mosque for a long time. That's a good thing. You're basically trying to have that communication and talk. But at the same time, back in your mind, you still feel that I am there every time there is something in the mosque. However, there are people who are going through a lot of things. Maybe they have children at home. Maybe they are going through some emotional trauma. Maybe they are into any medical condition. So before you even think about these things, meaning judging, first look at it inwards. It's very important that I am going to the mosque every time because I can. However, there are people who are not able to. So this is one thing even within the community that we want to talk about even before acceptance outside. So first, people in the community have to accept you for who you are before anybody else. And before that happens, you as a person have to accept yourself for who you are.
Now, this of course is the key, Sister Uzma, and I know you always say that once you understand who you are, you have identified yourself, then it really doesn't matter anymore who thinks what of you, and you know you are on your path and your journey. But the reality is, you know, a lot of us are not always on this path. Some people may be at the very start, some people may be having, you know, be in a good path, and then things happen in life happens, and then they are vulnerable, and this time when you're vulnerable, you know, when somebody says something, it can be a big trigger sometimes. So, you know, how do you make people, I mean, conscious? How do you raise awareness that somebody constantly thinks before they speak? I mean, there are some people, for example, they want to be kind, they want to say the right things, but often maybe they don't know what to say. We see that in bereavement. When people come and want to say sorry to you, a lot of times they say the wrong things because they just simply don't know what to say. You know, a lot of other times you meet somebody after a long time, you don't know what to say, so you're only going to comment on their body shame them in one way or the other, and you're just commenting on how they're looking, and it's because people don't know what to say. How do we help those situations, Sister Uzma?
Yeah, beautiful question. And you know, the reason I always say, like, everything is taking you back to yourself, because your soul's whole creation, the aspect of your soul, is always wanting to become whole, always driving to succeed and elevate. And all of these things that are trying to drag it and anchor it down are going to be things that are triggering, and they are going to be things that bring other bits of you out. And so therefore, it's really important to look within. I think that's what it always pushes us back to look within, to see a sense of hate, a sense of resentment, a sense of judgment towards that we have towards anyone else. You are in fact hating that very lack that you have within yourself. And if we could start to become aware and use that as a mirror and see it as an opportunity. When you say to me, Sister Sakina, I think you make a terrible coach, instead of me sitting there and sulking about it and going to talk to Sister Sharmina and say, you know what she said about me, instead of that, I would sit in my own space, and I would use that as an opportunity to reflect on, why did it trigger me? Do I believe what Sister Sakina just said about me? How do I believe it? How much do I believe it? Why do I believe it? And when we start to question, when we start to analyze the truth behind that, you will see that there is a lack. If I believe that actually I'm not, if I have imposter syndrome and I actually feel like I'm not a great coach, but I'm pretending to be this wonderful person, and then you've said something that triggers that part of me, and then instantly I'm like all blown over because you've said something that I actually believe to be the truth about myself, really deep down, but I don't really know it because I've suppressed it that long. These are the truths that we need to start bringing and digging up. It's a painful, uncomfortable process to go through, which is why mostly 99.9% of the people don't do it, because it's just far easier to sit there and natter and chatter, because it's a fun time, because we're and Shaitan has a wonderful way, because when he sees one person hating, he's like, oh, I've got you right where I want you. He finds another person and he pulls two people together who are just now starting to talk about that third person who isn't aware. And subhanallah, our religion has placed it so beautifully that actually the stack and mountains of their beautiful amal are going to that person. So it's actually benefiting that person. But really what these people are doing is damaging their soul and splitting themselves even further. And it only requires consciousness and expansion of consciousness. There are dark areas within us that need the light of the consciousness to bring it to illumination, so that we can understand a deeper aspect of ourselves. It's not that difficult. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy, because being truthful to yourself is one of the hardest things, because we all think we're good people. We all think that I'm not a bad person. I don't go out of my way to hurt anybody. Yet I will indulge myself in judging someone else. I'll be looking at somebody else and say, oh, well, who does she think she is? And we don't see that as a bad thing, because it's become a foundational way of just the way that I am now. And it's become a part of me. And that is the real crux of the matter. When it becomes so unconscious part of you that you don't even think about it anymore, that's a major issue. If this wasn't an issue in our communities, we wouldn't be having a conversation. It is a major issue in our community, and it's growing by the minute. It's in every single field, from little kids to like really old people. It's amazing how many people indulge in this disease that is really hurting everyone else. And in actual fact, what this is, what I started with, is an opportunity that the soul is providing to you to reflect and look within and think about, what I hate in someone else is a lack within me. So how do I now use this as an opportunity to expand my consciousness so I do not lose more of myself? That is an uncomfortable truth that a lot of people will not take the time to go into.
Fabulous. And let me just remind you viewers, if any of you want to be involved in the discussion, please do give us a call. You are more than welcome to join in the conversations with your comments or with questions. Now, coming back to your Sister Sharmina, I think maybe we see some generational differences when it comes to this. Is your perspective the same, that you think that younger people today are a bit less judgmental, that they are more accepting of differences, and that this is a problem that is creating, even bigger issues between the generations, because our generation, is very judgmental?
Yeah, that's a great question. Exactly. What I would say is, don't walk my path if you haven't walked my journey. And what that I'm really trying to emphasize is the children, the new generation right now, they are into all this. They don't want to take what their parents were suffering. They don't want to suffer that way. They are not, I would say, maybe you could call it blunt, or you can even say that they are direct. So for them right now, say body shaming, this, that, they don't accept that. They just want to be who they are, and they want to love themselves first before thinking about anything else. Whereas back in our times, people would also judge you with the appearance. Back then, not as much now. You could be a little bigger, and there would be like, maybe she's not taking care of herself, or maybe she doesn't want to go to the gym, or she is probably stuffing herself with all junk food. Now again, that's our thought process, but that is how we have judged people in the past and maybe until today. More than realizing that, you know what, people don't really have to go to the gym or don't have to eat junk food to be the size they are. There is a possibility they are going through some hormonal challenges. There could be a possibility that they are taking some kind of medication which is a side effect, and that side effect is their body right now. So there is a lot of awareness now in this generation, where people are now accepting people who they are, the young generation, because they are aware of it. And I think by us talking about it, having these kind of discussions, as Sister Uzma said, this is an excellent thing. And then when people have questions, I just realized you have questions from the viewers. That is also an excellent thing, because people can actually ask. There are a lot of people who are suffering silently. They are ashamed of how they look, how they feel, where they go, what they do. It's like walking on pins and needles, because you feel that as soon as you step out, somebody is going to look at you and say something. So sometimes people just get in their own shell out of fear of what is being said about you.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. And I think in a lot of other fields, I mean, when it comes to, we find young people find this with religiosity a lot, you know, constant criticisms, even when they try their level best to do as much as they can. And we will only pinpoint, you know, what is wrong in people, and often seclude them even more. But Sister Uzma, is there a limit to us saying, you know, can we, for example, say, let's become a completely non-judgmental people, completely the society, nobody judges, thinks of anyone evil. Is that also practical or good? Because the concept of Amr bil Maruf, again, you know, there has to be a certain element, wouldn't you say, that we have to kind of coach each other, we have to kind of keep each other on track? Or is it okay to be completely judgment-free environment?
Yeah, wonderful question. You know, extreme of anything is never going to be good. When we're extremely, when we get to the extreme of not caring at all and becoming totally passive, it's never going to be a good thing. And when we get so judgmental that we drive a woman not to decide to have another child because of the tension within a mosque, two of these extremes are toxic in their own right. A balance is always the right way to be. And one of the things you were just mentioning, like youth, one of the reasons youth are so off-put from religion is because sometimes, it's a heartbreaking truth not a lot of people will admit, the more religious people become, the more judgmental they become, because they haven't actually grasped the authentic truth and the spirituality within that growth. So it's a very surface level growth. They pray and they take care of all this, everything. You know, it looks great and it feels great, but there is something that, you know, when you're having a conversation with a very religious, deeply introspective person that comes across that way, subtly, like they'll drop something in the conversation, and it makes you feel smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and inferior. And by the time you walk away from that conversation, you're left thinking, I don't feel good. Like, I don't even know why, because they didn't outright tell you that you're a terrible person and I'm so much better than you, but there was a lot of hints thrown. When we have that kind of an approach, it's passive aggressive, it's toxic, it's not a good way to be. I think it all drives us back to where? Self-awareness and authenticity, and that is what we're missing at core. Until we get this right, until we all start to reflect, until we start to see that every single thing that's happening in our life, everything, good, bad, ugly, happy, sad, all of those things are actually happening because they are there to make us a better person. They are driving us to get to our authentic place, but we don't see them as that because we would just pretend and remain unconscious about what it's trying to present. So we never see it as an opportunity, we see it as a detriiment to ourselves.
So Uzma, you've raised a really subject that I personally feel very, very strongly about, which is the judgments from the religious, people who think they are elite. Now, you know, a lot of us don't really think that we are religious. Or when you pass your comments, or sometimes when, like you say, you know, it's very subtle. You're not even doing it as a matter of being judgmental, but it's simply that certain aspects of your life have not been touched. For example, you've led a comfortable life, everything's good in your life, you know, you had good parents, you have good children, and nothing has shaken you. So, you know, there isn't an awareness, and you genuinely might be a good person, you know, understanding religion as you think is the best, and you genuinely want to try and lead people towards the right path, and you are not seeing these subtle messages because life hasn't touched you. And oftentimes, you know, before something touches us, we don't understand it. So for people like that, how do you even become aware of issues like that? Until something happens to you, how do you even suddenly wake up and think, am I right? Am I doing this? Am I doing this wrong? How do you inject self-awareness in that kind of people?
You know, it's a wonderful question, and I'm going to kind of negate what you just said. Unless you're a newborn baby, it's almost impossible that life hasn't touched you, because life is going to present things to you. There is always going to be hardship in one way or another. But I get what you mean, like the big traumas where you had to witness domestic violence or a parent split, or you know, things that were like really, really big, things that we outright like accept as traumas. Unless that's happened, it's like, yeah, life was okay, we had ups and downs, and you know, that was the normal. You're talking about that kind of a person. Now, even within that up and down, there is so much that happens within that person's life. And this is the problem. Every child, when they're born into a family, a household, that household has a set of values that they see as their values. And they will do everything in their power to make sure that that child adheres to these sets of values. Now, when a child shows signs that they don't want to adhere to these values, or that they want to do things slightly differently, that family is very rigid with how they want that child to be. So they will, through the whole process of reward and punishment, they will show that child, you're accepted when you're within this box that we've created for you. You're completely rejected when you step out of it. And that starts to build some coping mechanisms within a child. Those coping mechanisms are where we start to suppress and hide ourselves away. And the bits of ourselves that weren't accepted, that were never seen as bits that could be loved, we put those away. They're never going to be on display. So they go so far in hiding that it's almost like they don't even exist. And then we amplify those bits of ourselves that the family really celebrated, the bits that we felt really accepted by, loved by. And this goes on into our adulthood. And then we become oblivious to those parts of ourselves that really were authentically us. And we lose there's a big gap between the authentic and who you are. And these coping mechanisms, we will continue using them. And you know, the most prevalent place, the biggest, like the most prominent relationship that all of these will start oozing out very, very quickly is a marriage. Because you're now having to live with another person, and you usually end up attracting the kind of person who's vibrationally going to trigger every bit of you that's been hiding, because you've kind of mirrored that person into your life. What you hate in your partner, what you hate in those that are closest to you, is the exact parts that you are rejecting in yourself. Very hard truth to accept and acknowledge, but it is something that we need to start thinking about and looking within. I'm never going to give any other message, Sister Sakina. That's all you're going to get from me, because it is within and then without, because we can't fix the out until we fix the in. So in the whole community, we're not sitting here to fix the community. We're telling every single person who this is landing in the ears of, it's your job to fix your own self. There ain't nobody going to come and say, hey, I've got this for you, I'm presenting. There is information out there in abundance. There is support out there in abundance. It is your job to find and seek the circle of people that is going to help you elevate and get to know yourself in a more deeper way. We can't put that on, again, we're projecting. We can't put that on, I'm like this because my father was like this. I'm like this because my mother treated me like this. These are truths, but they're excuses as an adult. We need to become aware, and we need to start to understand. Now, you're talking about a person who has lack of self-awareness. That, if you're just sailing through life like a driftwood, if the wind takes you that way, you're that way, and if the wind takes you this way, that's the way you are, that's a problem. Like that in itself is an indicator of how unconscious your life is, that nothing seems to touch you. You've become so passive about life in itself that you've become emotionless, and that in itself is a really big telltale sign of you suppressing and repressing really big parts of yourself. So there is definitely introspection required there.
Absolutely brilliant. And Sister Uzma, that really is an important issue, because, you know, self-awareness all the time, knowing yourself is when, you know, you're going to cope with mechanisms. But Sister Sharmina, let me bring you here. Sister Uzma has touched a sensitive issue of marriage. Now, there, as we know, lots and lots of judgment from every corner. I mean, you start in your relationship, it isn't just about the two people, everybody involved. And this is not to say it used to happen, it still happens. It's very real. But what Sister Uzma is saying is quite interesting, that you know, instead of looking at everyone else and saying, these are how our mother-in-laws are, this is how the husband is, look within, just within yourselves and fix it. Is it even doable? I mean, if, for example, in the cultures that we live in and the traditions that we have around marriage, is it even possible for you to fix it just within you?
So speaking of something that I said about how it used to be worse, it's basically like you can take a person out of a stone age, but you can't take the stone age out of that person. People have misconception, and if they are very happily married, they have everything in their lives. I mean, alhamdulillah, may Allah give you more. But who are you to look at other people who are going through issues and problems and make judgment that maybe this person did not try hard enough? I can assure you, a man or a woman, we can never say whether a man hasn't tried or a woman hasn't tried. Everybody tries their best to keep that marriage, especially when you have children. So definitely everybody is trying their best. However, there comes a time where you feel that you cannot just walk that path together, maybe because it's going to affect your children or whatever it may be. People go through a huge trauma when they are going through this. So my message would be, before anybody judges somebody because they feel they are happily married, just look inwards and see how perfect you are, because nobody is perfect. It's all about it's your perceived flaws or imperfections in others that resembles what you dislike. So if in life you haven't got something, in spite of all the money and the possessions you have, but if there is something, like say you're not happy with one thing and you look at another person who probably doesn't have what you have, but she or he is more happy, that's where you will start to judge, because it's not about that person, it's about you, and it's how you feel, it's your values.
When it's the same subject, I want to continue a little bit discussion on this, Sister Uzma. We're talking here about divorces. It's one of the issues that as a society, it bothers us a lot, obviously, because the number of divorces are huge in our communities. But doesn't the problem start way before marriage? We are entering into these institutions without knowing ourselves, each one of us, and therefore we enter into an institution and then it's hazard, you know, all over the place. How do we create this space whereby each of us, before embarking on a relationship like marriage, we know who we are, what do we want out of this, and not just one person, but everybody within the system knows what is it that they are getting into?
I just love that question so much. And being a divorcee myself, I know the pain and the suffering that goes with it. Being a single parent myself, I know what happens when children are involved and when you are left to pick up the pieces of being an unconscious person and being with an unconscious person. So I've made it my mission. My mission statement in the programs that I try to deliver is I'm on a mission to change the world one woman at a time, because the ripple effect is just gigantic. To stop this cycle of generational passing of trauma after trauma after trauma, we must do something, and this is the action that every single one of us can take. When a marriage is taking place, I honestly believe there should be a compulsory education that they have to go through to understand who they are, what they bring to the party, and what they're actually looking for. you don't get what you want, you get who you are. Vibrationally speaking, if a person is at a low self-esteem state, they are only going to attract the exact same. And then the problems hit when two people of low self-esteem are together trying to like create a marriage. There is no such thing as honeymoon, because it fizzles out so quickly that it hits you like a train has hit you on your face. And then you're starting to like, you know, panic and all sorts of things. And then if children are in the mix, it makes it even worse of a mix. So I'm doing the little bit that I can. I teach this. This is a part of my program, that there is a pre-marriage course. And I try to talk to young women, and I speak to a lot of women. I speak to divorcees who are trying to get married again, and I speak to women who haven't yet embarked on the journey of marriage. I'm like, don't do it. Not yet. Let's talk about this before you do this. Because especially if you've been through a divorce and you're looking to resettle, it's a whole different, like, they think they're aware now, because I know what to look out for. But my goodness, they couldn't be so further from the truth, because they're still carrying all that anxiety, all that pain, all that suffering from the previous relationship, and they think this new knight in shining armor is going to come and fix it all and take it all away. It's not going to happen, my sister, whoever you're listening, oh brother, it's not going to happen. Within, I will keep saying this, you have to go and understand your own self, your hurts, your wounds, your traumas, your unexpressed emotions. You have to understand all of them. You have to get to know yourself. You have to process all of them. You have to get conscious about yourself. And then you're ready to even start talking to another person. And the beauty of that is that when you do this self-work, when you have a conversation with a person who you're trying to now resettle, you're going to be like at a standard where this is a new you, like that you've built, because now you know yourself at a whole different level. The conversation you have at this level will be with a person who's also at this level. You wouldn't even entertain a conversation with a person who's a low self-esteem person, because you are aware. They become see-through to you, like mirrors, like glass. You wouldn't even get into a conversation with a person. Like the first conversation will reveal everything about the way that you're, the kind of questions you ask. I even give a list of questions that you need to ask from a potential partner. It is so essential. So if you're looking at this and you are looking to get married and you haven't done your self-work and you are filled with anxiety and you go through depression, dips and ups and downs, and you have so many things that are unresolved, please don't get married. This is coming from a divorcee. Please don't get married yet. Please go within. Please find out about yourself. And then you can start to embark on that journey. And it will be beautiful, because you'll attract the right person for yourself, inshallah.
So important, honestly, not just for our communities, leaders to be listening to this, but for every parent. I think each of us as parents, you know, whatever we have gone through, our role as mothers is to ensure that our children, our daughters, our sons do not repeat this generational trauma that we keep on passing on and on. And so, you know, every child of ours must get the level of self-awareness before they partner with another person. And of course, you know, the empowerment that comes from knowing yourself. I mean, you know, even when you are in conflict, whether it is with children or conflict with partner, conflict with even friends and family, the moment you start knowing yourself, and then you are, you know, you're humble enough to say, this is my problem. I mean, suddenly there is such a huge shift, because your relationships start changing. A lot of it you can fix yourself. But then again, we come to the issue of cutting off toxic people from your life. Sister Sharmina, a lot of times, you know, when you have discovered yourself, there are people who just don't do you favor. People around you that you just need to cut them off your life. But this is practically very, very difficult. A lot of times these people are family. What do we do in instances like those?
Just try to reiterate the questions. Are you saying that there are times where we have to break relationship with people because we find them toxic? Is that what the question is?
Yes.
Right. So for me, I would say completely cutting down on relationship is not good. But as long as you can have assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, and the best thing is time. Time is a healer, because sometimes you don't want to talk to that person just so that you get some time to focus and to work on your own emotional well-being before you can talk to that person. So I would say not really cutting ties with people, but I would say people should understand all you're asking for is time. And it's something which is very important because we don't want to hold grudges in our heart. So with time and with patience, and obviously you're praying to Allah to make everything better. And with time, I can tell you, things just get better. Just get better and better. If you believe in yourself, if you work on healing your own insecurities, and if you learn to accept yourself, because we're always talking about accept people for who they are, that is 100% true. But before that, you want to accept yourself for who you are. You're big, you're small, you're black, you're white, you're this, you're that, you're educated, you're not educated, you're divorced, you're married, you're single. Whoever you are, work on yourself, accept yourself, and also take one day at a time, because nobody is perfect.
Absolutely.
And as I said before, time is a healer.
Thank you, Sister Sharmina. We are almost out of time, but last question to you, Sister Uzma, the same question. If somebody is not adding anything to my life and actually taking something away from my life, why should I have them in my life?
Well, you shouldn't. If you're not obliged Islamically to have them in your life, don't have them in your life. That's my barometer of understanding. Should I have this person? Should I have not? They're just a friend. But if they're a toxic friend and they leave you feeling ill and nauseous every time you meet them, they don't belong in your life. And you have to get like cutthroat easy about this, because to me, like, I don't want to negate what Sister Sharmina said, because there is a lot of truth in what she just said, but I just want to add a little bit to it. I don't believe time is the healer. I don't run on the currency of time, because I think time, you can just sit and spend time and it does nothing unless you put energy and focus into that time. And within a very short space of time, as you're utilizing your energy, it changes everything. But if you're doing nothing with your energy, and you can spend 10 years and it won't do anything, because you're still triggered by that person if you haven't actually shifted the patterns that you've got going on inside of you. So there is an element of truth there. But I do think that when it comes to people, the first thing you need to see is, am I religiously obligated to keep this person in my life, or am I not? That's the first and fundamental question. If you are not, honestly, the easiest and the best go to practice for you is to cut them off. If you are obligated to keep in touch with them, you can't cut ties. Like, Islamically, we're not going to go against what Islam says. However, there are 1,001 different ways in which you can still keep a connection with them, but not, and work on yourself so much that it's almost like they can't get to you. You have this asada around you, this glass, that every time they send something, it's like it bounces back off. It can't even touch you anymore. That's self-empowerment. That's, again, within. It's going to come back to you getting to know yourself at that deep level, that nothing can bother you. And I had a conversation very quickly, because I know you're out of time, just last week, with a sister who said, my mother-in-law, oh my God, she's driving me nuts. I feel like, my marriage can work, but it's not working because of my mother-in-law. We had this really lovely conversation, and I said to her, you know what? You don't live with your mother-in-law. Like, she doesn't actually live in the same house, but she lives in your mind rent-free. You're sat there talking like you've got your children, and you've got your home, and you've built it the way that you want. Everything is there, but she's with you. In the kitchen, she's with you. While you're washing, she's with you. While you're trying to play with your son, she's with you. Like, what is this? So don't take people with you. If you're having an exchange with somebody, it lasts up until it lasts, and every time it pops back up, you have to learn how to not allow that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sister Uzma, and that is why Imam Muhammad Baqir says to us that the closest a believer comes to kufr is when they accuse someone else. May Allah guide us all to stop this bad habit. And thank you so much to my guests for being with us today. Thank you, Sister Uzma, and thank you so much, Sister Sharmina, for being with us. And thank you all for watching. Inshallah, we'll meet again next week, same time. Khuda Hafiz.
Trust has two